my name is Belinda Dovston, and welcome to our deep dive episode into Hexagram 13, Fellowship, also called Harmonizing People. In this episode, we're going to take a look at how to work with this hexagram and how to apply it, work with the interpretation, and make it practical, that when we work with this hexagram, it comes up for us in the casting of the coins, that it makes sense and we can work with practically how to apply this information in our lives and to our question at hand. Of course, if you would like to skip along to a particular part of this episode, go and have a look at the time codes either in the episode scroller that YouTube provides or into the description of this episode where all the time codes are provided, which is really great if you're coming back to this episode having worked with the hexagram and you're looking for a particular changing line to apply. Right, so let's get into the text specs. If we look at this hexagram, okay, on the top, okay, the upper trigram, the top three lines, we have heaven, okay, which moves up with energy. On the bottom, we have fire, okay, right, which also burns up. So we see an example of how a fire burning always burns upwards. Think about a big bonfire, right? It's always burning up. Okay, so these movements of these two trigrams are up. They are collective together. They work well together. And there's this lovely unity in moving up. And that gives us a little bit of an idea around the movement of the energy, all right? How this trigram is connected, the two trigrams together. If we look at this hexagram, of course, all the lines, bar line 2, are all male yang lines. And here we have this little female yin line sitting in the second position. And so this position refers in the hierarchy of people, again, not to the prince or the king, which is towards the top of the trigram in line 5, but here we're talking about the general, the great leader position in line 2. Okay. And so with this position, right, what we're talking about is we're talking about the importance of a principle, okay? So it's not a king enforcing its rule, okay, upon the kingdom. It's about the leaders within the people, okay, the bottom position of strength, yielding, okay, to the strong lines, or the strong lines all working with this yielding supportive line in line 2. It talks about, in this hexagram, about the importance of that line, that harmonizing principle, okay, the leader or the harmonizing collective good that is holding all those strong lines together, okay. The way the strength is moved forward is by yielding to that line, okay, to that principle. Okay, so when I think about the story of this hexagram, what does it mean? Okay, I think immediately of any example where there's a fellowship, where people work together to achieve something important. One of the best things in my mind, okay, that speaks to this idea is the worldwide scouting movement. Okay, so we have a youngster who is a scout, all right? And so we are involved in the scouting community. This is something that is a symbol that is very pertinent in my life. And you will need to find your own example of what fellowship looks like. So I think of the scouting movement. I think of this worldwide movement of all these little groups around the world, all right? They have their own localized colors and badges, but there is a scout law and promise. There is a way of scouting. There's iconography and practice that is the same around the world. And there's a meaningful purpose that binds everyone. I mean, it's a volunteer organization. I often think, you know, these people give up their Friday nights or whatever night, you know, is a scouting night where you are, and they give up their private time to develop leadership in their youth. Why do people do that? And so it's an interesting idea, this idea of scouting, this very strong core set of values and practices and rituals that bind all these people together to achieve the development of leadership in youth. It is amazing, okay? And so in our lives, when this hexagram comes up, what we're being asked to do is to find fellowship, okay? Is to reach out and harmonize with others. Not because we all happen to share our same financial goals or we all want the same personal thing, okay? When we talk about this hexagram, we're talking about a deeper binding, right? Like that scout law and promise. We are looking at a deeper thing that binds us together. Something really meaningful, something really important that is holding all of us in this little fellowship together. So from a work point of view, for example, this might be a collaborative partnership with a whole lot of people in your industry, for example. This might be within your own team, developing a very clear principle that everyone is united around, developing a feeling of fellowship where we are working together in a harmonized, collaborative way to achieve something. This word collaboration is such a powerful way of explaining this hexagram. But we collaborate not to make money, although that is a goal and I'm not putting judgment on it. But why do we make the money? Okay, what does that do for us? Look deeper beyond the outward goal, okay? And money is just one example. There's lots of different ways where you look below the goal, you see something deeper and more meaningful. So when we get this hexagram, when we're asked to pay attention to fellowship, there's a couple of things that we can work with. One is creating harmony in the group is really, really important. Harmony around the central idea. If you get this hexagram for your team question or a business question, perhaps you're being called to clarify the reason that everyone is connected, okay, and get everyone back to that root cause, okay, back to the principle that stuck everyone together like glue, okay? Maybe you can be the glue that can stick everyone together, that can reconnect everyone to that binding principle. And perhaps your group has lost its way. Perhaps there is disharmony. Well, my view is that our responsibility when we are in a group that we've committed to, and when we're in a fellowship, that we need to rush in and resolve that disharmony. We cannot be bystanders and sit on the outside and criticize and throw stones, okay? We need to rush in and resolve the disharmony in our fellowships. So for you, work with, where do I need to collaborate? Where do I need to leverage this amazing wealth of people around me? Where am I already? In a collab, okay, where I can achieve something because the fellowship's already there. Where can I rush in to resolve the disharmony? Where can I reconnect everyone to the meaningful purpose, right? Get everyone back to why we got together in the first place and leverage the power of the group, the power of the fellowship. Irrespective of whether it's diverse or not diverse, creating a space, no matter what the diversity, that we all have something we share and getting back to that. So let's have a look at the changing lines for fellowship. The first changing line in the text says, fellowship with men at the gate, no blame. And so we can visualize this changing line, the men at the gate or the people at the gate, all right, the humans at the gate, being the gate into the city, okay, the starting point of a fellowship. How we start, okay, is really important. So this line will typically come up when you're at the beginning of a collab, right? Where you're at the beginning of a fellowship or the beginning of a new phase of the fellowship. And this line really comes to say, we're at the gate, okay? We all gather together, we're squished together, waiting to go through the gate. And at this point, it's important that everybody is equal, that everybody shares in the vision, okay, or the values of what we're trying to do, and that everyone has space to be there at the gate and to be equal. Because fellowships tend to scatter and break up over time if disharmony is not resolved. But here, as we start, here at this point, we cluster around the gate. We're all standing together. We're all equidistant, as it were, clustered together and united as we begin this new journey. What's important then, how we work with this line, is making sure we're all on the bus together, right? We're all at the gate. We all have had a say. We are all equal, okay? It's equitable, and we all share the same goal. We're going through this gate together for the same reason, the same underlying reason. And if there is anything that is not aligned with that, we need to rectify that before the process really gets going. Changing line in the second place reads, fellowship with men in the clan, people in the clan, humiliation. And so here comes the factions that I mentioned that are a risk in any fellowship. Here, what we're being asked to do is that when we split into clans, okay, when we break off out of the greater fellowship into smaller factions where really it's a life and death struggle or a struggle to prove that I am right and you are wrong, I'm okay, you're not okay, we have a problem. Okay, so this line is a warning against getting caught up in factions, okay, little side splittings of the wider fellowship that have issues with what's going on, but have not got the courage to deal with it, who don't understand their responsibility to make sure the fellowship as a whole is prosperous, who haven't realized you need to rush in and resolve the disharmony. So you have to watch out that as you get this line, that you are not the one creating a faction, and that you are not being sucked into a faction that's been created, and that you diffuse those little clans, okay? Find a way to lead, if you see them, is to lead the people out of factionism and into fellowship. I mean, we see this issue in our society today. This could be one of the main changing lines to define the challenges we face right now of factionism, okay? And that's how we work with this line. And then the changing line in the third place reads in the text, he hides weapons in the thicket, he climbs the high hill in front of it. For 3 years, he does not rise up. Well, this line certainly doesn't sound good, does it? And it speaks to mistrust. Okay, we hide our weapons in the thicket. Okay, we hide our possessions. Okay, all the things that are of value, the tools, right? We climb the high hill to spy on our partners. All right, and if we continue down this road, for 3 years, you will not be able to rise up. And that talks about this idea of prolonged activity of mistrust will break down for a long period the fellowship, the harmonizing principle. So for you, when you get this changing line, all right, depending on what question you've asked, whether it's for you or someone else, what we're being asked to say, what we're being asked to think about is where has the mistrust come in to break down the fellowship? Okay, now we think there's ghosts and demons. Very often when we think there's ghosts and demons and underhanded tactics, usually it's a misunderstanding and it's nothing to do with that at all. When we get this line, we have to take responsibility that perhaps we have become very secretive, okay, mistrusting, doubtful, and instead of reaching out to harmonize, we are hiding our weapons and climbing the hill to spy. And so what can we do differently? We can be vulnerable, we can have critical conversations, we can open up the dialogue to check our understanding that our partners or our collaborative fellowship is indeed, going behind our back or doing things they shouldn't do, okay? We have to get out of paranoia and we have to get into truth and we have to dialogue, we have to talk, we have to harmonize with the people that are important to us. Okay, so this line is very much about taking responsibility for if we feel mistrusting, okay, if we feel the need to spy and look behind our backs and put in place the detectives to track our mates, it's that kind of idea of dialogue and communication and harmonizing is the way to mitigate the disaster that could come through this repeated behavior for too long a time. Line 4 in the text says, he climbs up on his wall, he cannot attack. Good fortune. And so here we see a little bit of a progression from the previous line where it was all about mistrust, okay, and spying and paranoia. Here, there is a movement forward, okay? Instead of attacking, each of us are on our pillars on the wall of our castle, looking across the moat at the other person and not able to attack because we're on the wall, but that being progress, okay? This talks about, in a way, being put into the timeout chair. Okay, you and the other, you are in conflict. If this is about a person or an organization, are needing a timeout, okay? Maybe there's been fighting, disharmony. And so being able to just do the timeout chair to get a little bit of breathing space and not be on the attack or the defense is a good thing. That's why it's good fortune in this line. There's progress, all right, from where it came from. So as you work with this line, see it as a way of, even though you're still disconnected, there's a barrier between you and the other. And it can be you and the fellowship, or you and person, or you and an organization, or your organization and another organization. The fact that there's a little bit of a timeout, take the time out, okay? Encourage, let's just have a little bit of breathing space. Let's sit on our wall, okay? We can stare at each other and stare them down, okay? But let's just take a time out, a breather, and just give ourselves time to calm down and to remember why we are together in the first place, why we are collaborating, why we are working together, and then we're in a position to move forward on this. But the fact that we can take the time out is progress, because it means we aren't fighting, and that is the point of this changing line. In line 5, the text reads, "Men bound in fellowship first weep and lament, but afterward they laugh. After great struggles, they succeed in meeting." And here we see in this line, victory over the obstacles to unity, to union, to fellowship, to harmony. There's a very strong explanation with this line of one person and another, where you can imagine two lovers have become estranged. Think of Romeo and Juliet with a different ending. And there's this process of this deep love, this deep unity, this deep bond, okay, or shared value system, now being under threat because of all the difficulties that keep these two separated, okay. This line says, despite the challenges, okay, remember that there's something really important that is binding everyone together in this fellowship. And despite the challenges, persevere and keep on finding ways to reunite, to harmonize, and to reach the other person, okay, that perhaps was estranged on the top of their castle wall as you stared at them before. Now what we're doing is we're seeking unity. There's obstacles to be overcome to get there, but it is worthwhile. We might have wept and lamented, okay? There might have been some real emotional difficulties in pursuing this harmony and finding a way to work together, but we have to pursue it. We have to keep working forward. We must pursue the opportunity to overcome these obstacles, because with that comes the joy of finally being together, okay? And so, for example, in your business context, there might be some big obstacles that are preventing you and other partners working together, or the right people to come into your team, or the right clients to say yes to projects. Keep persevering, because what belongs together finds each other in the end if we put in the work. Good news. And then the last changing line in the top line in position 6 says, fellowship with men in the meadow, no remorse. And here the meadow refers to an open field in front of the town, and people are wandering around the field, and they are on the field, and they are associating, they're collaborating, they're in a fellowship just because they happen to be on the field. So there's something around the process here where perhaps the fellowship in question, or the question that you've asked that is connected to this idea of harmonizing and collaborating, actually everyone is on the field because they are situationally connected, okay? They're not meaningfully and deeply connected and bound by a purpose, like, you know, the scouting idea that I spoke about. Perhaps they're just there because their parents want to get rid of them for a Friday night, right? Some parents do that, and scouting is that. But what I'm talking about here is really about a whole lot of people who happen to be on the field together, right, in the meadow, and as a result, they are collaborating. But that's really not true collaboration, is it? And so as we work with this idea, with this changing line, we recognize that maybe it's okay, as long as we're aware that actually we're all got shared interests, but we're not really here because we're wanting to change the world, right? We just happen to be situationally connected. It's like, you know, when you have friends at work, right? And if you were no longer working for that company, those friends would disappear, okay? They're friends because you happen to work together. You might have one or two friends that stay with you coming out of that process, meaningful friends, meaningful collaborations. But this idea applies, right? We are situationally connected, and so that is why we are collaborating. And maybe that's okay for now. Just be conscious and aware that that is what the process is about, and work with it the best that you can. So in summary, Hexagram 30, fellowship, harmonizing with others, is the epitome of collaboration, of having a meaningful purpose that binds everyone together, right? that really connects everyone to that central set of value systems, to that goal, to that project that is going to be valuable to each person in that collaboration, or each company in that collaboration, each party. Where we find that there is disharmony in a fellowship that's important to us, we need to take responsibility for rushing in to resolve the disharmony, of finding ways of reconnecting everyone to what's really important. Be this in your teams, where you need to reconnect everyone to the goals that you're working towards as an organization or as a team, whether it's in your family, whether it's in a set of people who are friends. What does fellowship mean in light of your question? What attributes of fellowship are you aligned with, and where are you having some challenges that need some harmonizing? Strive to work with others, to collaborate, to make meaningful contributions through this collection of people, of ideas, and make magic, because you're doing it with other like-minded people. Thank you so much. Enjoy working with this wonderful hexagram. And of course, please do like or share if it was meaningful in working with this hexagram with me. And subscribe if you'd like to receive the weekly and monthly I Ching episodes, where we look into how to apply the I Ching on a week-to-week basis, on a month-to-month basis. And of course, please do join me on the socials. Thank you so much, and take care.